Hello and welcome to the Pause It podcast. I am Dr. Sam, and with me, as always, is Dr. Robert. How are you doing, Dr. Robert?
Good. It's good seeing you again.
It's good to see you. And I see we have a guest, and this is someone that you know very well. So I will let you do the introductions this time.
This is actually someone who's my boss. She keeps me in check at work. This is Madisyn Jensen. She is the hospital director for Ethos Veterinary Specialty Hospital of Sorento Valley. She keeps all of everyone in line and runs a big ship. So we want her here to come today because I want to really get a chance to kind of share her background, how she got to where she's at, and really all the stuff that goes into running a hospital. I think a lot of pet owners see kind of the front staff, they see the doctors, the technicians, but they don't know kind of how much work really goes into keeping everything running the way it is and why. I mean, prices are the way they are, just how we have to do certain things in a certain way to keep everybody happy. So Madisyn, thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. I think your beginnings are actually probably pretty cool, how you got to where you are. I think you're a total badass, and I think it's great that you kind of started. I'd love to have you kind of share kind of where you started and how you got to where you are, and kind of has this always been your aspirations, and kind of go from there.
Sounds good. So I got here by sheer luck. That's what I like
hard work. And hard work.
I was gonna say, I bet there was a little bit of hard work in there too.
There was some labor. No, so I graduated college with a degree that has nothing to do with business management. I actually graduated with environmental science as my degree.
Okay.
And so I moved to San Diego the year after, took one of those gap years to figure out what you want to actually do with this degree you just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on. And ended up working for a nonprofit here in San Diego called the Face Foundation. And so I interned there, I worked their events and so forth. And I actually met the hospital director, medical director, owner of VSH at the time, who was Dr. Keith Richter. And I met him and Dr. Hart at a charity event dinner. And they were talking about the hospital, and they mentioned, jobs that were available there. And I thought, well, I'm really enjoying working for this nonprofit with pets, but I make zero money and I live in San Diego. So I apply. I actually interviewed in one of our exam rooms at the time.
Very practical.
And I got the job, and I worked the front desk, answering phones, checking in clients, as all of our clients and Dr. Perkins sees today, the exact same desk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for a few years and really fell in love with the company and the culture and just the field and where it was going. And so just kind of moved myself up to being a lead, a supervisor. I became the manager. And then in 2018, they just decided, you know what, let's do hospital director next. So I've been the hospital director for the last 5 years now.
Has it really been that long?
Yes, it has. I know.
Okay. That's all the more impressive.
That's really amazing, especially since you started, at the front desk,
Yep.
Which I think has to make, that's such a valuable thing for you to really understand what it feels like to be on every single rung of the ladder, because you did it.
Absolutely. And I think it actually gave me somewhat of a foundation of, a lot of people who do my job come from business management, MBAs, they do all that stuff and it's fantastic. And they have so much behind them, financially, which is a big part of my job, and operationally. But being on the floor and working with the staff on such a one-on-one level, I think made me a different style of director. It gave me a foundation of why we're here and what we're here for. And while all the other things are important that we can talk about, meeting budget, you have to make money. I think how I came about this job made me appreciate the staff so much more. It made me prioritize them so much more because I was with them in the trenches for so long.
Mm-hmm.
The front desk, wasn't teching by any means, and I will never pretend to know anything about it. But I think it just gave me a different sense of understanding of what we do there. It's not just a business.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much more than that. And so I think that kind of helped steer my viewpoint of what my job is now, is to have that background.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think just knowing each level of how things work gives you an appreciation for it and an understanding of what they end up doing. Because everybody has their own problems. It's it's funny because I'll sometimes pop up into surgery some days. That's a different department, or internal medicine, and they'll have issues with certain things where I'm just like, that's not an issue that I have. My issue is getting my staff to eat on time and stuff like that because of how busy ER is sometimes. And it's just everybody has a little bit different issues that they deal with. So I think that understanding is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think too, it makes you so much more approachable, right? I mean, like for those people that have these issues every day, they have to deal with it. And now it is probably a little harder for you because now you actually do really have to juggle both sides, the human side of understanding where they are. But at the same time, you, like you said, you've got things that you have to keep in order, deadlines you have to meet. So what on a day-to-day basis, like you're, I'm guessing, ordering all the supplies, making sure that everybody has what they need. And like you said, you have budgets and things like that. So can you like explain a little bit of like what you do every single day?
Yeah. Easier said than done, actually.
Yeah, like it's not the same every day.
Yes, I feel like my closet is full of every hat possible, and I pick one each day. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, my job is 100% to run the hospital from start to finish. And we don't close, so that is a constant start to finish. But mainly, yes, I control, and Ethos as a corporation actually allows its hospital directors, managers, AMDs to be a part of the budget process, which is pretty unique, actually.
Yeah.
So I get to say what I want to do each year. I get to, add positions and so forth like that, depending on, what I saw from the year previous. And so that's pretty unique about our company. So I deal a lot with the budget. I deal a lot with, the national side of things, what, their goals are. And, I compare and contrast and keep them with the hospital goals. But from there, it's managing the managers, managing the supervisors, managing departments when we don't have a manager, like I'm doing right now for.
Yep.
And involved in a lot of hiring, involved in the day-to-day of department problems. Today we couldn't get images to go to rocket packs from the IM scope. So I'm in there trying to call IT to figure that out for them. And kind of just running all the mini departments with our hospital. So, we have a supply chain department. So, my job is to make sure everything gets ordered by the person who's supposed to order it. So it's a lot of oversight of a lot of different things. And then when those things don't work out, then it's my job to figure out why they didn't work out.
Make them work. And I think like maybe it might be really helpful to understand the scope of the hospital that you're working in, because even just what you're explaining is probably like 5 of my clinics. Like in one, I work in a general practice with 4 doctors. You guys have like 20 doctors, don't you?
Yeah, so we have just shy of about 30 specialists. Or 30 doctors, including our ECC doctors. But with all of our interns and residents, roughly about 45 to 50 doctors under the roof. We have about 200 staff members, about 250 if you count per diems and part-time. So it is quite a large business happening in what feels like a very, very small building, I will say.
Like if you look at our building from the outside,
I think Parkins can agree with that.
Because I came from a smaller hospital, I remember coming into VSH for the first time and being like, this place is massive. It's like 3 levels and there's like 4 or 18 exam rooms. I'm like, this place is just insane. And keeping it all together is kudos to you. I think it's like herding cats, honestly. Like when doctors don't get their way, we all know we're like babies sometimes. So we are not always the best about how we want things.
I would say herding this hospital is like, or getting this hospital together some days is like herding blind cats.
That sounds about right.
I haven't had their gabapentin.
Yes, who haven't. I learned today actually in ER, Dr. Gettyman taught me about, what was it called? The kitty magic.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It's a great trio of drugs.
I came in, he said, just give him some kitty magic. And I turned to him and I looked at him and I was like, I'm sorry, what are you dosing the patients with? And it's a real thing for fractious cats.
Yep. It's how we don't get bit and when the really angry ones come in.
Yes. And this cat was very angry today. So
ghost pepper level spicy.
Oh, I love the ghost. I heard that recently, the ghost pepper level spicy. That's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. I'm like, that's extremely accurate.
Yeah.
Madisyn, I think one big thing that people so there's hospital directors and then there's medical directors. And would you kind of go over the difference for everybody, like what they do, how you guys work together, and then what you guys kind of do separately?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my role as hospital director is the operational aspect. As a medical director, how VSH has it currently, we have 3 associate medical directors who oversee various departments. And so the goal of the medical directors is definitely to be a partner with myself, because I don't know the medicine in and out like they do. So if someone comes to me and says, I want a protocol for x-rays after an NG tube, I'd be like, great, let me get back to you on that. So that's where they come in, is they are the spearheads of the medicine aspect to make sure this hospital is, updating our policies, making sure that we are providing the best medicine possible. They provide input on, medical situations that happen at the hospital, things we want to change, new medications, new procedures, if I wanted to start a new department. I don't have many left to start, but they would be a big part of that. And they also are, they're there to be there for the doctors. Everyone who works in the veterinary field, whether it's a kennel attendant, supply chain coordinator, doctor, specialist, has a very stressful and demanding job in its own way. And the AMDs or medical directors are there to support those doctors and those departments. While I help with the staff, they're helping the doctors who are also going through what the staff is going through every day, whether it's euthanizing patients, long-term patients, 20 cases on the board in an hour, which can and does happen. It's probably happening right now because I put it out in the universe. But so they're there to be there for the doctors and to support me and support this hospital from a medicine aspect, because that's what we're here to do. I can make sure all of the bills are paid, everybody's hired, the budget is great. But if I don't have the best doctors working for me who are in the best headspace and feel supported and cared for what they do, then it's just not going to work. So that is what they're there for.
That really speaks a lot to your culture, I would say, because the fact that is even on your radar, is really, really important, especially just with burnout and all that other stuff that happens. Are the medical directors practicing as well? Or, okay, so they've got kind of 2 hats.
Yes, they have. Yes, they also wear a lot of hats. And I think our medical directors are some of the few that actually have not cut back at all. So, Stephanie Estevan, sorry, is my medical director over ECC, and she still works 4 shifts a week. She does all of her AMD or medical director stuff, which is, the residency program, reviews, all of that on her days off. So yes, they all practice full time.
Steph is like Superwoman. I don't know how she
really
functions.
Is. She really
sleeps.
is.
I don't think she does sleep.
Yeah, one of a kind right there.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome. But again, you keep everybody in line as well, so it takes a lot on your part. And I think maybe a good thing to bring up is if an owner is upset, who are they going to see? Like, if there's a concern, what issues would you be ones that you're addressing? What would be ones maybe the medical directors would be addressing, or maybe there's a combination of both?
Yeah, it definitely can be a combination of both. My philosophy is, and I think the philosophy and service industry in general is the client is always right. And I think that aspect, has shifted and changed over the years, but I feel as though the client always has a right to be listened to and heard. And, so does my staff, but their perspective is super important, and their understanding of what happened, what didn't happen, even if it's a small thing. I think every client deserves that platform. And so how we do things at our hospital is probably similar to other places, but I only have one place to compare it to. Is that the managers are always involved with their own departments, and they support each other. So let's say a client is upset about maybe radiographs. They'll talk to, potentially a supervisor at the time, because, I think clients should never leave the building angry. Like, we should try to do our best to try, it's like going to bed angry. Like, it's probably not the best idea. And so, but after that, manager talks to them. And then if for some reason we cannot get it resolved with a manager, which is very rare, because we do have really great managers who will talk to clients every day until they feel heard and understood, and we've come to some type of agreement, whatever that may be. And most of the time, it's just talking to somebody about their experience, which, like I said, everybody deserves a platform. And so I usually will get involved when it is a little bit more serious than that, which, we always hope is very rare, but it does happen. That is the nature of medicine.
Yeah.
Same in the human field. It's just going to happen. I mean, we're working with life and death here. So it's not a return to Forever 21. So,
That's a good way to put it.
yeah, right. And so, I'll get involved when it becomes, pretty serious, or the client wants a medical review, or the client wants to go to our insurance, or there's a potential for even further, which can, and they have the right to do that if they need to potentially go outside of the hospital to, whether that's, the courts, a lawyer, anything like that. When that takes place, I will be the sole person of communication at that point. And then the AMDs really, for the most part, are really good about how they get involved is if it's a medical situation, whether it's communication over disease or process, or didn't feel like the ultrasound, all of those things that can come about. And that,
Right.
As a pet owner myself, it can be very confusing to get all these results and answers, and you still don't know what's going on. And so, the AMDs get involved in the sense that they are more and always willing to talk to the clients, go through it, be on the phone with the clients or in person with the doctor that treated the pet, to be there for the clients, to be there for our staff as well. They do medical reviews of anybody's cases. But that's how, we get them involved in the medicine side, because it wouldn't be appropriate for me to say, no, we did nothing, or this is completely fine, because that is not my area of expertise. So I will not pretend that is my area of expertise. But yeah, so it's kind of how that goes when it has to happen.
I think people, like you said, like they just need to say what they need to say.
Yeah.
And when you shut them down, it's like, that's when, huge things erupt. And so it's good that you have those processes there, and you have the people there to say, hey, we hear you. This is what happened. And most of the time it's just the communication and the willingness to talk to people. And you guys are always dealing with charged emotional situations with your emergency, or even you have specialists. So it's all people who have these like advanced diseases that weren't figured out at their GP. And that's where you start to really escalate price and concern and all those things. And that's a whole lot of emotion. And I even had those people who just, like you said, they just, you go brain dead when you're hearing so many things coming at you at once. It's like, I just need someone to let me talk for 5 minutes, and then I'll be able to move on most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would like to say it about myself too, but no, I think it's you're not, like I said, you're not dealing with something simple like a messed up order from a restaurant. You're dealing with someone's pet who, if they've had them for a day or 10 years, it doesn't matter. That is part of their family. We've had so many tragic situations over the years that we've learned about through clients telling us about like how they got this pet and what this pet means to them. And I think we can all understand where they're coming from as pet owners, and we work in this field. And so even if you know that your staff did everything they could, and I always trust my staff without a doubt, and I will always back them. But like, I also agree that these clients who just, poured in a lot of money, the vet industry is not cheap. And I think we can all agree on that. Poured a lot of money and emotions into the situation and didn't come out with an outcome they wanted. And even if they're not mad, they just don't understand. We have a responsibility as professionals, as doctors, as leaders in this company and organization and field, to provide them with everything we can. And once we have reached the maximum that we can do, is provide them with the resources to help them and move forward. I always tell my staff, I don't want them to take this home with them. And I know it's really hard to not take this stuff home with them. Same with the doctors. I can imagine the weight they carry. But I think what makes this hospital good, or makes this hospital even better, is understanding the weight the client carries. They're the ones going home with the empty collar. So understanding that and not being quick to be defensive or, we didn't do anything and everything like that just only makes the situation worse. And so, a big advocate for the client always deserves a platform.
Oh, I think it's great that you mentioned earlier, like you specifically said, I'm a pet owner as well. And I think I'm guilty of it. I know I am. Sometimes doctors, we're so used to doing medicine, and we're rushing around trying to get things done that we I don't want to say we disassociate, but sometimes we do. Like the emotional part, we
Yeah.
forget that. I forget that I'm a pet owner half the time. So I'm just like, you're in doctor mode, you're treating things, and you're like, it just, you kind of lose it sometimes. So it's nice to keep that in the forefront of your brain that this is their own pet.
I think I totally get it. The disassociating, like it's just, it happens, I think, when you deal with what you guys deal with on a day-to-day basis, and the amount of clients you have to deal with. I think that's one thing a lot of clients don't, they don't see. I mean, if you're sitting in a lobby for 6 hours, you're going to see. But if you're dropping off your pet and then picking him up later, you don't see that. We've seen over 50 clients that day. We've, done CPR 3 times already that day. We've lost all 3 patients. Like, a lot of that isn't seen by the public, and we don't want them to see that. Like, we want them to leave with their pet feeling great about their individual dog and going home and celebrating that. So there's a lot that is unseen, and I think we disassociate it with it sometimes, but I think what makes this hospital and this industry better is remembering that, is even when we disassociate, remembering that, yeah, this client might have come in. I mean, I've been this person before. I said I would never do this, but I brought my dog in when he started limping out of nowhere. I just assumed he had bone cancer. And so, but for me, it was real. It was real in that moment. Yes. And even though afterwards I felt ridiculous, in that moment, I couldn't help myself but feel like if he doesn't get treated now, then I have done him an injustice. Mm-hmm. And so I think remembering that and keeping it in the forefront on those really, really bad days can be a challenge. But I think that's what makes this hospital different and makes these doctors be some of the best doctors I've ever met in my life, is that they remember those things and they treat every client with the individuality that they deserve.
Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing that people don't realize too, is that when you come in and you have that conversation, you've just had that conversation, and you've just had that conversation, and you've just had that conversation. You know what I mean? But you're right. It is so important, because it really doesn't matter if I've had this conversation 15 times already in the last hour. I have to do it again because it's the first time these people have ever heard it. And it wouldn't be fair to them if I didn't come in with the same, vigor that I had on the first 10 ones. You know what I mean?
Come in and say, it's a fracture, Yeah.
Or it's a fracture. Yeah. Not osteosarcoma.
That's right. Yes. Nothing is wrong. Here is gabapentin.
Those are happy days.
Best thing to say.
Right. Aren't you glad when you give out some gabapentin all day? So
those are better days. I appreciate those days.
Yeah. Well, that's what Robert and I one time we were talking about, like our favorite things, where people are like, there's this mass, and you're like, no, it's a nipple, go home, bye-bye. Like, those are our best days ever. Like, please come in, and like, it's a reverse sneeze, go, goodbye. You're okay.
Yes, saving some paperwork, and I'm very happy about it. So I'll never complain about those cases.
You know what? It gives them the reassurance, and sometimes that's all you can give someone that day, and that's all they needed.
Yep, absolutely.
And honestly, I feel like it brings us so much joy that I actually I'm like, great, go, goodbye. Like it is nice to give good news. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, you can see the relief sometimes on people's faces as they're doing like the bedside ultrasound, and you just like see their fingers crossed underneath, like, please, 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 please. Yeah. And it's almost like you can see that sense of relief. And like, this is a hospital that loves tricky cases. They love to get everybody involved. They love those things that, that it has a great outcome, but it's going to take 8 different steps to make this work. But there's nothing more, I think, fulfilling than scanning a belly and being like, oh, okay, whew, you're good.
Nothing's happening.
I couldn't agree more. Those are good days, and you can definitely see the relief on their faces.
Yeah. Nobody wants to give bad news. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody got into this industry thinking, I'm going to give bad news every day and I'm going to enjoy this.
That's true.
Definitely not.
What would you say is probably the most difficult part of your job?
I
Working with me? Okay.
Yeah, definitely Robert, and with like a sprinkle of Jack. No, I think, there's a lot of challenging aspects, but challenging in a good way too. There's nothing better than people like being so passionate that they almost fight with you over things. Because for me, I'm like, there's part of me that's like, why are you talking to me like that? And then the other part of me is like, you are so passionate about what you do. I can't even be mad, because you want something so much for the clients in this hospital and this staff that, that part makes my job I'm glad, because if no one was upset, no one cared, no one said anything to me, then I know that I'm not doing my job at all. And so I think there's a lot of challenging aspects. You know, there's challenging situations, especially when it's a client situation, and it can be really challenging and difficult because there's a part of you that just feels so bad for them, but you also feel bad for the staff too. They also lost something in this situation. But I think for me, it's when I love our staff and I've grown up with a lot of them actually. And so they know me really well. I'm almost too approachable, to be honest. And so I think for me, when I can tell that they are disappointed in something, whether it was a decision I made, a decision the hospital made, because sometimes it's not always my decision, but I have to be the one that takes the brunt of it. I think that's probably the hardest part, because you want them to be happy and you know how hard they're working. And when you know they're not happy, or that, a decision we had to make or a change we had to make really is upsetting to them, and you can tell that they're trying to hold that back from you. I think that for me is always the most challenging part, because I just want the staff to know how great they are. And on those really hard days, it's hard to find that ground with them. So I that's probably the biggest challenge. Because there's a lot of them. It's not like I've got 5, I have 115 technician assistants, and each of them does so much for this hospital, and you just want them to know that, and you want them to be happy all of the time. And I probably suffocate them with my are you happy today? So I think for me, that's always been a challenge. I think that always will be a challenge for me personally.
And is it kind of like one of those things where you really do want everyone to be happy, but you can't, that's too many people. You can't possibly give everybody every single thing that they want all the time.
I can't. I think if I could, this hospital would have gone under and closed a few years ago. That's for sure. I would have probably 15 surgical tables just in the hallways waiting in case they need. So it's always the surgeons. But yeah, I can't give everything what they want. And I think part of it is we're not just VSH. We are owned by Ethos and VA. We are part of a huge corporation. It's not just my hospital. While I will always fight for this hospital with whoever I have to fight with or fight for to get what we want and what we need, I know it's not just me. There's 145 other hospitals under this umbrella, and all are fighting for what they want and what they need for their community. So it's a juggling. It's juggling between giving everybody everything they want to make their day so much easier, and everything that I can do to make it easier.
Do you find with such a big team and such a big hospital, because you made such a point with the communication with the people outside of the hospital, how hard is it to kind of communicate goals and communicate everything within the staff? Because I feel like that's where a lot of culture breaks down.
Yeah, I agree. It is definitely, sometimes I feel like I'm just this week alone, we're migrating emails, and I'm just telling them, this is what you're going to do. You're going to do it on this day, and don't complain. And fingers crossed, because I know half of them are going to complain, and I'll understand why. But, I'm expecting you to work 10 hours on the floor, but also fix your email. So now I got so sidetracked about what the actual question was. Now just
it's just about communication. How do you guys have meetings? Do you guys have meetings and emails and memos and how do you get everybody on the same page?
Yeah. Thank you for the reminder for my goldfish.
No problem.
Yeah, so it is challenging. It is challenging. And, I think people think, I always hear this, and I always this is one of the one things I'll tell a manager. If you tell me that you emailed them, that's not how we communicate. So there's different forms of communication. And I learned this way when I was doing client service manager or client care supervisor. And I'll just say that being a supervisor at VSH is probably the hardest job, actually, was my hardest job. Because you were on the floor 24/7 hearing it left and right. But I would say that you can't just communicate with someone via email. That's just not how life works. It is not, we are part of corporate America in a sense, but we really aren't. Veterinary offices function very different. And so what I believe is in-person communication, email communication, and meetings. All three. I'm sure there's so many people that are like, Madisyn, you've already told me this 16 times. But with such a big company and making sure that our goals are on the forefront of like what we want to do and, what we want to be in this community, which is, the #1 veterinary hospital in San Diego to refer cases to, that has always been the goal. And what I've always thought is, even if you feel like you're there, if you stop working for it, you're going to lose it real quick. Yeah. And so I, communicate with all these different people. That's where a lot of the AMDs come into place. They share my goals. We talk about things that I'm looking for their help on with their individual teams. They have meetings, they have one-on-ones. It's constant. Mm-hmm. If a manager tells me that they had a one-on-one with other staff and this is the first time they talk to them in 6 months, we've got a problem, a big one. Right. And so, it's a lot of boots on the ground. I'll be the first person to say my job. Yes, I'm behind a desk a lot because I'm in meetings, taking calls, doing all that stuff. But I believe in being out on the floor as much as possible. And sometimes that's really easy and sometimes that's really challenging. Mm-hmm. But being a part of your staff is what's actually going to lead them in the right way and lead that direction is really integrating yourself with what their day looks like, what their struggles are, and then merging that with what is our goal as a hospital and how do I figure out putting those two lanes together, making a cohesive highway.
Right.
It's a tough, it's a lot of moving pieces and I mean, I'm guilty of it. I know I missed things. And I've gotten 3 emails and I was like, and I've gotten in-person communication sometimes and still sometimes you miss it. So it's tough to get all the things across the board. So it's a lot.
You gotta have a lot of grace. You really do. You have to have a lot of grace and a lot of patience and, always remembering what the main goal is every day. And that is the patience. It's always the patience. It is always providing the best elite world-class care as we mentally and physically can. Mm-hmm. And that is a challenge in itself. So that should always be the #1 goal every single day. And everything else can follow suit if we're doing that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Now for yourself, obviously you're a hospital director right now. Right. Is there any future that you're hoping to you're happy where you're at right now? Or would you like to kind of take a bigger role at some point? Or you're like, nope, I love hanging out with you guys so much, I don't want to leave.
I do love hanging out with you guys. VSH is my home. I've worked at VSH since I was 21, 22 years old. I'm not going to tell you my age now. And so so for me, it's the place that I feel comfortable and I feel challenged still though. And I feel like if you're not challenged, that's when you start to get almost bored and itchy to like move on. And this hospital does not stop challenging me. Some days are easier than others, but I think for me in the future, I want to be able to, I definitely think there's a difference, and maybe other directors who watch this podcast will disagree with this sentiment. But I definitely feel like there's so many different ways to manage. And I think I personally feel as though the way that I manage and the way that I want my hospital AMDs and managers to manage is so much different than behind a screen. And I would love to be able to somehow take that and instill at other places. Is about like this cohesive environment. It's not, all of your managers and then all the people on the floor and you never see each other unless it's your review, and which is just inappropriate. And so I liked that aspect at VSH and I want to be able to spread what we have created. So in the future, if I could do something like that, that'd be great. But I really do like where I'm at. And, I thoroughly enjoy my job and the challenges that challenge me to be a better person every day. And I think what it is that everyone is challenging you to do more, to grow more, to be a better person. So like even on those really, really tough days where you just want to strong arm somebody, which I would never be able to do. I'm 5'2". I can't strong arm anybody. But you're also but today I learned something new about myself. Today I grew more patience. Today I realized, someone else's frustration with me, and I got to see it firsthand and I watched it. That happened to me last week. I totally confused a whole department, and I actually was able to look back and be like, oh, okay, those are the 3 steps I did wrong. And this is how we can come back to get back on the same page. And so I think because of that, it provides me with something more and, to grow each day in the role that I've been in for a while.
The fact that you even have the ability to sit there and go, I made a mistake means you're an amazing manager. No, I'm just saying, I mean, truthfully, because I think the biggest fault people have is thinking that they have all the answers and they have nowhere else to go and they cannot grow. And the fact of the matter is, I feel like the people who are the most influential and the people that are the most inspiring and interesting people in general are people who surround themselves with people who they can learn from, whether it's doing exactly the same thing, like Robert always says. But it sounds like that's how you are too. You are so positive. I love hearing you talk about it, because the fact of the matter is, there can be so much negativity, especially when there are bad outcomes and there are things that we want to be doing differently. And you can focus on those things, or you can figure out, how do I grow? How do we get better? What's the next thing we can do to get better? And you have the ability to affect change with either one, but I feel you've chosen a very positive one. So it's very inspiring. I love hearing the way you talk about what you do. I can see why Robert is as impressed by you as he is.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, this hospital has so much more to give, and we give a lot, we give a ton, and I tell the techs every time I can, I'm not a pat yourself on the back kind of person. And so, but I'm in awe of them every day. The things that they can do are quite amazing. We've had so many doctors who come to the hospital to, whether interview or shadow or, coming from other places that are starting a department and they want to see what we do. A lot of them say the techs here are above what I've ever seen. And so being able to support that and being able to support that growth, I mean, it has been probably one of the biggest parts of my job that I have enjoyed tremendously. And I agree. I think if someone can't admit that, I didn't do the right thing here, I made a mistake, I communicated that poorly, then you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to grow. You're not going to be influential in this department. You're not going to help this department. If anything, you are showcasing, kind of a bad habit, in my personal opinion. There's something to say about being humble and patient and admitting when I don't have all the answers. I mean, I think Robert heard me probably say it on a meeting when I'm like, what questions do you have? I probably won't have an answer, but I will get you an answer, because I don't know it all. And I think that's what makes my job challenging, but also invigorating in a kind of way, is that, every day provides so many things that I learn. And even with just the staff, I enjoy walking into ER and asking what cases are there and having them start to explain it. And then I'm like, whoa. You need to go to those dummy books and re-explain it. You got some practice patient communication on me. So yeah, it's such an exciting and challenging work industry to be involved in. I mean, the vet industry is growing like crazy and has changed so much just in the last 5 years that, there's just so much more to provide and to do and to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're seeing it every day, especially with the work that we're doing. We're trying to see it's exploding and trying to keep up with it. It's, I just went to a conference this last week, and the theme of the conference is innovation, how it can benefit the veterinary industry. It's, if you don't start taking these moves, trying to keep up with it, you are going to fall behind and get obsolete at some point, because of just, we need to keep up. There's shortages. There are answers. We just have to utilize them and go from there. So it's,
there's a lot of things. Yeah, there's a ton of things. I'm taking I just finished a course for a graduate program. And, one of the things I used basically all of the stuff I have from BSH for this class. So I felt like I was probably cheating. So hopefully the professor does not. Because it was about using graphs and data visualization. So I used all the stuff I already have. But one of the things in there is that this presentation I had was like, what do we do next? Like, how do you solve the problem that your data is presenting? And, the fact is there is more clients than ever. There's not enough vets. There's not enough, skilled RBTs. There's a lot of green people coming out of school, and nothing is better than getting someone that you can help mold and grow their career. And I think even our staff love that. But there's burnout, there's fatigue. I don't think a lot of people really understand the stress that was put on people on the medical side. And I think, for nurses and doctors, and they had a whole different thing that we had.
Right.
These, you guys were essential employees, and you spent hours and hours and hours and hours, and you have not been able to catch up quite yet. And it's still that busy some days. And, so how do we move forward in this new age of, if this is what the client base is going to be like, we need to have more vets. We need to have better benefits. We need to have internal training programs for people out of school who can't afford to go to PEMA and be in $30,000 worth of debt. And we've seen how many techs at our location alone didn't go to school at all and are the best techs in the building, hands down. Jeff, Courtney, Kristen, these are the prime techs. And I say that like, you know who that is. Sorry. Robert.
I know what you're talking about, but yes, I would agree there.
And they'll enjoy the shout out.
Crap. And, we have so many really, really good techs in our hospital. And so how do we utilize that? How do we get better technology, to help clients? Telehealth, how do we get people to get insurance more? All of these things are the things that we should be looking towards as we move forward, because the industry is not slowing down.
No. And with all the innovation and everything that's coming up, people expect that for their pets, but it also makes things so much more expensive. And so just by itself, keeping things as it is, things are getting more expensive just because everything is. But then when you want all the new treatments and the different things that you expect to see when you treat a human, they cost money, and it's a completely different model when it's a cash model in veterinary medicine with very little insurance, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, we need to promote insurance like crazy. That is, I think that is the next, I mean, it's a big thing now, but I think that is the next thing that really, I tell every client I talk to, get insurance. I don't care if you didn't use it for 10 years, you're going to use it one day. I promise you that. If you get if you're going to get a dachshund, get insurance, if you're going to
say that every dachshund puppy,
and because what the difference between the human field and the veterinary field is that I can go and get a CT. I mean, it may take me 6 weeks to get one, but I can go and get a CT, and I only see a portion of that bill maybe 6 months later. These clients are paying for it up front, and that is a challenge. That is a lot of money to ask the people. But on the back end, to run that machine alone, just your CT will not make me break even in the next 60, 90 days. To run the machine, to have the techs who can run it, to have the tech who does anesthesia, to have the people who come out and service it. So I'll have all the supply, it all adds up. And, I've talked to so many clients about costs, and I understand where they're coming from. I am a pet owner myself. And if I did not work where I got a great discount, I would have pet insurance. And I would highly consider, I would look at them and be like, are you worth it? And they always yes, but you can still be mad about it. It's not just, these aren't screws I bought at Walmart. These are screws that are going in your pet's body, and they cost an arm and a leg. And you'd be surprised how much these supplies, the inflation alone. I mean, the inflation in the vet industry is 6% now. It's double regular inflation.
Yeah.
I think I read during this project that $20 now in the vet industry is a 20 is now $68. And so it is expensive, and no one is denying that. We need to figure out how we can sustain while clients can afford.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's all we can do.
Yeah. And I do think because it's medical, right? You were making the comparison between, well, when you go to the doctor, people expect a copay or something like that. And then, you know what I mean? They're very detached from the actual cost, which is actually far more than our costs, as far as what is all actually cost. But people they're so separated from it. They don't realize. And a lot of times you're right. You don't get a bill for 6 months. I mean, I was in the hospital, I had an appendectomy, and I think I got my, bill 6-8 months later. And when you actually look at the breakdown, if we did, I mean, we don't do appendectomies in dogs, but if we did, we would do it for 1/10 of the cost, literally.
Yeah, right. And I mean, to run, like, just to throw, some math, basic math. I'm not a mathematician, but calculator is my best friend. Let's say a hospital makes $3 million in 1 month, and that's a lot of money. I hear that. That's a lot of money. I mean, I find a 20 in my purse, so I'm excited. But $3 million in 1 month. I had to pay the doctors and I have to pay the staff. That cuts out half of that immediately. 1.5 done, just to pay everybody to be there. And when you run a 24/7 organization, I had to pay people around the clock in California 24/7. And then you get halfway through your money, and then you got to pay all the benefits, and which, it's very, very important. And I wholeheartedly believe the more benefits for what the staff does is huge. And that's a big push of mine every year. But then you pay all the benefits, and you pay all of, the operational people, me, and then you get down to it and you pay all your operational costs. And there is something to be said about keeping the lights on. I know it's a joke. I know it's so funny, we have clients who always are like, I feel like I paid for this wing of the hospital. And I look at their bill. I'm like, no, you didn't.
You're like, you probably didn't even pay for this Q-tip.
A lot of money, and I know that.
Yeah.
And you get to the end of it, after you've paid everything, maybe the hospital made $300,000. That's just the fact. And that's after you pay everything. And then that goes back into reinvesting in the hospital, because that will buy me maybe an MRI in 2 years.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. That's the reality of it.
Right.
Like, I think, and people always say it's because you pay the doctor so much, you inflate everything. And I understand where they're coming from, like, it does feel like, why is that so expensive? But on the back end, when you know what it costs and you know what the staff puts into their job,
right,
and that they deserve more and more every year, in my personal opinion, this should be a career job it's a career for doctors, yes, but it should be a career for the technicians. This is an RN level job. This is a career. It's cost more and more every year. And I hate raising prices on clients. I fight so hard to not raise exam prices and lab prices, because if you can't get in the door and you can't pay to get that CNC, you're going nowhere. Right. But it's just the reality that we're in, and, finding ways to help support our clients and keep the hospital functioning, right. At least just functioning, not even profiting, just functioning is a balance. It's a balancing act every single month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we can say that, where we're at in San Diego, we're very lucky.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I left one of the other Ethos hospitals, which is a great location. I love the people there. I would have taken them with me if I could have, because there's awesome people.
I wish you would have.
They're gonna bring more people down. But there was a lot of low income people there, and there was a lot of those discussions all the time, and it wears on the team, and it unfortunately does impact how you pay the wonderful RVTs and non-licensed ones that we have. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest issues in our industry here very soon, because it should be a lifelong profession. They shouldn't need to have 2 other jobs to live where they live. And so yeah, it'll be interesting how we approach that as an industry moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it is. It's not just my job. It's not just your job to advocate. It's the entire industry has to shift a little bit.
Yeah.
And I say a little bit, but I mean a lot, but we'll start with a little bit and go from there.
Yeah. Good people in charge of it. We're going to figure it out. So
we will get there. We're in a much better place locally, I think, overall. And we've done a lot of work on the benefits, but there's so much more to go and so much more room to grow on that.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Well, thank goodness we have people like you that are looking into that and watching out for it, because it's true. If you don't have an advocate, or if you just have somebody, like you said, that you've lived it, you've been in the trenches with those people, maybe not as a tech, but it doesn't really matter, as a support, like part of the support staff. And if you only ever came in from the business side, maybe you would just be looking at dollars and cents and not realizing that the heart of the team, like, we can't do anything without our techs. We can't do anything without our assistants. We can't do anything without the front, the people, taking the phone calls and, all that. Like, we are nothing without that team around us. So, and the person keeping the lights on and paying for our equipment.
Yes, I actively pay the electricity bill. Yes.
Right.
Well, I appreciate it at night.
Well, thank goodness.
It gets really dark at night if it's not there.
Yes. So. Yes. Those stairwell lights are getting fixed tomorrow morning. I promise.
I go back tomorrow, so I'm very excited for that. So thank you.
Yes. They will be fixed by the time you get there.
Awesome.
I feel like we could probably talk to you for like 3 hours. So you've been so generous with your time, and I'm so excited to meet you. I've heard so many great things about you, like I said, and thank you so much for coming and sharing like this is a side that we really could never give insight to. So really, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate
I appreciate you guys having me on here and everything you guys are doing to help support my goals. You're doing all the work and I don't have to do that. But I appreciate being given the platform and the ability to chat with you guys and, share a little insight into the back end of running a hospital.
I definitely appreciate it. I owe you one in the future. I'll try to be less of a pain in the ass in the future for you. So
yeah, behave yourself, Robert.
Robert, you are one of the least of my problems most days.
That's good. I'll try and keep it that way at least.
Yes.
So.
Like that doesn't surprise me at all. And if people do ever have questions, they can always email us at podcast@mybalto.com, and we can always forward them to you through Robert or however else.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. You.
Well, this has been the Pause It Podcast. Thanks so much for listening.